Pause for Peace, and welcome to this second Sunday during this spiritual season of Lent. We are entering into a really, not just March, how is it even March 2026, this podcast being released on the 1st of March, but we are entering into this really interesting time in the liturgical calendar, this season of Lent, and in the scripture readings that are chosen this year. This is what's known as year A. There's a 3-year cycle of A, B, C. This is year A, and there's certain scripture readings that go along with each Sunday during this season of Lent from year A in the Revised Common Lectionary, which is where we have the scripture readings pulled together so that each week we can have this way of moving closer and closer into the season of Holy Week and the crucifixion and the resurrection joy of Easter morning. And thinking overarchingly about the weeks ahead in our scripture readings, we are going to be journeying with Jesus as he encounters a whole bunch of folks. Each week we have, through the Gospel of John, during the season of Lent, an encounter that Jesus has with somebody on his path. And the first week, this day, March 1st, in the scripture readings used for worship in our time of celebrating God and joining together to learn a little bit more about what Jesus is all about, we hear about the encounter Jesus has with Nicodemus. Nicodemus actually is a learned scholar of the Jewish faith, a teacher and rabbi himself, a Pharisee, and he comes to Jesus at night. He is somebody who today we would call a seeker. He is seeking this work, he's trying to understand what it is that God is doing in his life, in his heart, what is being moved, and how his hope is being inspired by the words that Jesus is saying, even though everybody else around him is saying, wait a minute, no. Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night. They have this incredibly powerful encounter. And as we move through the next stages of the season of Lent, Jesus is going to encounter a woman at a well in Samaria. And we'll dig all into that as we move through the Sundays during our preaching and teaching in worship. But this is such a unique encounter that Jesus has. It's almost as if he is seeking out this particular woman at this well, Jacob's well, in the land of Samaria, which is a land that really, for Jesus folks, it's kind of like, if you want to think about it as two tribes that kind of had separated themselves and were we're here, you're there, we believe this, you believe that, never shall the two come together. But Jesus particularly seeks this well, sends his own followers away so he can have this private encounter with this woman of Samaria who comes to the well when none of the other women come to the well because of her own background, because of what's going on in her life. We'll move on in the season of Lent to walk with Jesus into a situation where a boy, a man, really it's a man, but he is almost like he is a boy in some ways because he's still so tied to his parents in this story. And there is a way in which Jesus is being questioned, this man here that is blind, who sinned? This is literally what is kind of rumbling around in the hearts of the disciples and the crowd, who sinned that he's like this? Which is a horrible frame to have, which is exactly what Jesus says. Just because somebody is born blind does not mean that anybody sinned. It's something that happens. It happens, Jesus says, in particular, for this encounter that he has. This man actually is given a name in the history of the church, and while it's not in the actual scripture, he's known as Sidewin. And Sidewin is this incredible powerhouse of a man who goes on to be a part of the group that goes to southern France and begins to teach about what happened and like live in this particular way, this resurrection joy because of what God has done through Jesus in their lives. And Jesus is telling his disciples and everybody else, nobody sinned. Siddwin is just how he is, and he is beautiful and wonderful and fabulous. And I'm going to help him. I'm going to heal his eyesight so that he can live in joy. And he literally does this and says that Siddwin is like this for God's glory to be able to be seen. And continuing on along the way, Jesus actually is called to a particular place where probably one of his best friends, there's a lot of lore around what was Jesus' connection with Lazarus and Lazarus' sister. And there's this lore around is Jesus like best friends with Lazarus? Have they been? But somehow or another, Lazarus is stayed put in Bethany, but Jesus is being called to his bedside really because he's like died. And like these people that are like, we know that Jesus can work amazing miracles. Come on, Jesus, come. And Lazarus literally dies before Jesus gets there. And Lazarus' sister's like a mess. The English translation of this manuscript from the Gospel of John 11, we'll dive more into that during the season of Lent, but the sisters are named there in the English, and it is in the Greek, but it was not in the original manuscripts. It was added, tampered with. But the story is that there's Lazarus and Mary and Martha, and that they're like bereft because Jesus wasn't there. Like Lazarus was dying. Jesus didn't show up. He didn't like get there in time to work this healing. And yet something amazing and powerful happens, which like opens everybody's eyes even further about the power of God that is like flowing through Jesus. There's a way that he is living fully integrated that like these incredible miracles can take place. These amazing healings are able to happen. Lazarus is literally called forth from the grave, which gets Jesus in a lot of trouble, actually, and really kind of puts Lazarus in this precarious, weird situation of being somebody that like was this amazing miracle that then everybody gets all upset about that Jesus did this. And it leads to the tension that builds during Holy Week when Jesus encounters the crowds. When he comes into Jerusalem in a very particular way, which we will celebrate on Palm Sunday, Jesus is like coming in humbly, riding on a donkey. He is like almost like play acting what had been sort of foretold, and also is definitely almost like a protest that he is leading to show who he is. And like the way that is of God. Because here is a man who has spent the 3 years of his ministry, all the preparation time before that, leading up to being this embodiment of like pure love, of being somebody of compassion, of being somebody who's passionate so that when he sees something unjust happening to another, he acts because he knows that injustice anywhere is marring the image of God in those who are being impacted by the injustice and by those who are perpetrating the injustice. This is not how it is to be. So Jesus is in protest, really, riding humbly on this donkey into the beauty and pageantry of Palm Sunday, but more so into the beauty and pageantry and celebration of the Passover, which is one of the key feasts where Jews are to come together in Jesus' day in Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. And Jesus is in that long line and is encountered by a crowd who like sees him in this way that was foretold, that like there would be like somebody humbly riding on this donkey and kind of being the way of peace. And the crowds, as they encounter this experience of Jesus, ask, who is this? Like, who is this that this is taking place. It's a curiosity piqued in them when they encounter. And it's also a great sign of hope increasing in them as they wonder about who this is. Finally, through the Lenten season, we will come to the celebration of Easter. There's a lot more to happen in Holy Week. This crucifixion story is no fun, no joke. At Easter Sunday, we will hear how Jesus has this amazing encounter. The risen Christ, he is in the form of the risen Christ, and he has this amazing encounter with Mary the Magdalene. It's recorded in the Gospel of John. All these stories are recorded in the Gospel of John. We're diving into the Gospel of John during these next several weeks. And Jesus has this amazing encounter, the risen Christ meeting Mary the Magdalene in the resurrection garden. It's like all of the flowering is happening in this amazing work of resurrection. Now, I understand these are like big concepts. What is that all about? How could that have happened? All that kind of thing. What I want us to focus on in this pause for peace is the encounter. If we take all of those people together, Nicodemus, the Samaritan woman, Sidon, Lazarus and his sisters, the crowd wondering who is this, and Mary the Magdalene in the resurrection garden. We take all of those people, we have this eclectic group of people that Jesus is encountering. Possibly intentionally, perhaps it just happens to be that way. But these encounters that Jesus, it feels very intentional, the way he's like sought out and the way he seeks out for this like magical coming together to happen. Encounter is incredibly important, not just for Jesus and the risen Christ, but for all of us. So let me break that down a little bit. And I want to share a little bit about, I have a doctorate in ministry, and so in that degree, in my doctorate degree in ministry, I was actually focusing on the interplay of gospel and culture. And I was really like diving deep into that, reading more about it, writing a paper, like a major thesis on it. And in order to do that, we had to have some kind of like project we were to do. Like our paper was based on theory, but it was also based on practice. So it was like this theopractice kind of thing going on. And so it just so happened at that time, I came across this beautiful quote by Walter Wink and by Stringfellow. I cannot quote it exactly right now. It was Professor Campbell's work, who is a theologian there. He was at the time at Columbia Seminary in Decatur, Georgia. And Campbell says that the thing that the church is to do today, the thing that disciples of Jesus are to do today, is to practice moving outside of their comfortable circles. I'm paraphrasing what he said, moving outside of their comfortable circles to join Jesus on the edge, to literally intentionally move outside of the relationships we have every day so that we can join Jesus on the edge of encountering who is outside, like these hallowed walls of church. Who's outside this? Who is outside the sanctuary in which those that are part of a Christian household gather? Who is outside for us to encounter day by day? We run in certain circles and sort of bump into the same people and, shop at the same places and all that kind of stuff. But there are people all over this world that would do us well to encounter. And Campbell makes this claim because not only is that where we will encounter the risen Christ at work today, it is where we actually will work against what is known as the domination system. Okay, the domination system was one of the main focuses of my Doctor of Ministry degree. It has served me so well. There are those who actually like break down what a domination system is all about, what principles a domination system like operates by. And a big one is separation. A domination system seeks to separate people. A domination system will do that by fear. A domination system will incite violence. A domination system will get people to start pointing fingers at one another. When you start putting all of these things together, you become easily controlled. You have tunnel vision, and then whatever those who are behind the domination system, which changes throughout history, the players, if you will, who's ever behind that ends up doing whatever they want to us. We become totally manipulated. We start infighting. We start thinking somebody who is different than us is the bad guy. We start thinking the problems we have in our lives are their fault. This is all how the domination system works, and it continues to play upon us until, in fact, in fear, we become violent. Because the domination system works exactly in that way. The counter to the domination system, one powerful way of encountering that, because the domination system lives in all of us. This is in the air we breathe. It is also particular movements that happen throughout history, utilize all of these principles. Now, I'm not saying that they like sit around each day and like, how can we like find a way to like use this principle of the domination system, of the domination system in order to separate people. It may not be quite as planned, but what we can see is throughout history, when there has been great suffering, horrendous crime against humanity, these principles are taking place. And these principles get lodged within us. Babies don't come into the world like this. We end up like living and swimming in these understandings. And some of it's kind of biological. Like when I encounter something that like makes me afraid, my lizard brain takes over. I am in this fight, flee, or freeze stage. What is a counter to that is actually coming together. It is actually encountering. It is getting to know those who we think are so very different from us and finding the ways that we actually are the same. Finding the ways that we can be in solidarity. When the groups that the domination system seeks to separate begin to encounter one another, sometimes having to work very hard to like clear ourselves of the biases that we bring and begin to wonder about, I wonder why this person acts this way. I wonder why this person like seems so very different from me, but yet loves in the same way I do. I wonder why this person ... When we begin to recognize our own privileges, when we begin to like see the assumptions that we make every day about others, we can begin to be people who consciously seek to encounter difference, encounter those who drive us crazy, encounter people who we can begin to build bridges with. When we start to talk to people, when we actually ask people about their story, when we, with an open heart, graciously receive and seek to be hospitable to other people and find the common denominators, we no longer are able to be manipulated because we now have this face and story of somebody who we know is not the kinds of things we're being told, either internally or externally. This happens again and again. In my own life, I have totally seen this happen. And it really reminds me that this practice of encounter, of being in conversation, not just about like, what we disagree about, but like really telling one another our stories, being vulnerable, telling our pain. Yes, this can be a practice that is controlled so that we get a little better of it. But when we move outside of our circles of comfort with this open like stance of hospitality and wonder, we begin to be a people of immense generosity. The energy begins to be weaved between us in a very powerful way because we can no longer just lump all those people into one category because we've had this encounter with somebody who has shown us a different truth. I think this is a powerful way to approach the season of Lent this year. To be like paying attention to the stories that will be heard throughout our preaching all during Lent, and some that might make it into this podcast, of who is Jesus encountering and what happens when Jesus, like miraculous things happen when Jesus has encounters with people all along the way. Miraculous things still happen when we open ourselves in hospitality, in welcome, in wonder to those that we wouldn't normally connect with. There's miraculous, powerful stories to be shared that guide us then into different action. A practice of encounter is possible, like literally seeking to have that courage, which we might have to also practice courage in order to get to practice of encounter, that we might actually begin to be a people who seek solidarity, a people who realize we're all one. And yes, there are things that can like take us off from that. There are things that we're different about, and yet diversity is God's great gift. That is how the whole world has been created. All these different creatures that live around us, the different topography of the earth, everything we see, the plants, the vegetation, it's a vast, eclectic array of difference, and that is what makes it beautiful. I want to lead us in a little reflective time to get us in this frame of mind of practicing encounter. So I invite you to get yourself like comfortable where you are. You know I'm going to ask you to like get your feet flat on the earth. Remember, there's a little energetic tendril coming down from the soles of your feet. You can close your eyes at this time. I hope you're not walking or driving, but if you're walking, keep walking, but pay attention to the energy that is in your feet and how you're like every step is connecting you more and more and more with the earth under you. If you're driving, you really need to pull over and pause this podcast. And get yourself kind of grounded right there. Take a deep breath. In from the belly, release. As you settle back into yourself, take another deep breath, really opening the belly, the whole like cavity of the torso. The diaphragm, opening that up as you hold and then release. Deep breathing is such an important thing when we are seeking to be courageous, when we are seeking encounter, because as soon as we breathe deeply and we feel like our nervous system beginning to settle, we are coming back into our centeredness of self. We're recommitting to ourselves. We're a person of generous hospitality. Our breath reminding us that the encounter actually will open up. The energy will flow between us because we're not all afraid and worried and freaked out and like creating a very like chaotic energy field around us that the other person will like, that's what they will feel. So as we use our breath in meditation, we can also use our breath when we're in our everyday life, especially when we're about to encounter somebody different than us. So let's take another deep breath. Hold it and slowly release. And settle in right now. If you're feeling any kind of tension in your body, any kind of like racing within, just do a little shaking of it out, shaking it out, shaking it out. Just a few days ago, I was at the Sophia Center for the Healing Arts that just launched here at Hillwood Presbyterian Church, and one of the practitioners just led us in a little tapping exercise. It was nothing like formulaic about it. It was just tapping. It's one way to like help get out the stress and the anxiety and settle us in, be grounded. So one more deep breath. And release. And for a few moments, if we can turn off the left brain, so like we're going to turn off like the logical reasoning, like, figure it out kind of brain, and we're going to sit in the space of our heart, the middle of our chest. Begin to open this beautiful portal of our heart. We may want to put our hand in the center of our chest to help feel the energy beginning to awaken, beginning to flow, maybe even beginning to settle as you put your hand there. So that we can pose this question inwardly to the inward space of our heart and listen for the Spirit of God within to respond to us. All right, so the inward question today is, who do I need to encounter? Who do I need to encounter? Which will be different for every one of us because all of us have a growing edge that is different from others. Because some of us may never have been like raised around a lot of men, and others of us have spent a lot of time around men. And so based on who we are, we might need to be having very positive encounters, hospitable and generous encounters with men. Maybe it's sisters you never had or sisters that you were surrounded by. So either one, let's just listen internally. Who do I need to encounter? Maybe I've always been the worker bee and I don't understand management's decisions. And it's with an open heart that I might actually encounter and get to know my manager, if it's possible, or somebody who's in management beyond your work setting. Get to know them, hear their story, to realize, like, oh, we all have so many threads that are the same. So let's focus back on the state of our heart, right there in the center of our chest. And be asking the Spirit of God within, who do I need to encounter? And then just pay attention to what comes. Who do I need to encounter? If you find yourself trying to figure this out in your brain, take a deep breath, drop back into the space of your heart. Reset that intention, that question. We're querying the Spirit of God within. Who do I need to encounter? Let's take one more deep breath and release. And inwardly express some form of gratitude for whatever has come, however God has revealed to you in the stillness of these few moments around who you need to encounter. If you don't know how to thank the Spirit of God within you, just like put a smile on your face and like see what happens. Just to have this joy that we can be in communion because we have this like constant connection with the Spirit of God within. We have this constant ability to drop in and truly hear from the deep wisdom that is the God that lives within. So that we will know, like we will know our truth. We will know God's truth to us. And when you're ready, if you'll bring your palms together near your heart space, and let us bow together, reciting the words, "May it be so." May it be so. All right, friends, I hope you'll find some way to keep clear and keep before you, maybe a little sticky note on your mirror in the bathroom, who do I need to encounter and what was revealed to you in this time. Sometimes we have revealed to us like a picture that pops into our mind. Sometimes we have revealed to us just like a color that might like help us to know, like, I don't know, if it was like green. Okay, who do I need to have encounter with? Maybe somebody who is like really passionate about keeping the world green, about like truly honoring the trees and the vegetation. Maybe I actually heard a word that was revealed to me, or like had a scent that reminds me of a certain like perfumer, whatever it might be. These are all things to keep before us and then put intention into that. Like, okay, God, this is who I need to encounter. Unfold the way for me. This is the beautiful gift of this connection we have with God and how our lives can continue to be in this spirit of growth, of this like way of continuing to expand within us to be an incredible shining beacon of light and love and hope in this world. I hope you have a great week. I hope you enjoy this like coming of March and all that lies ahead in this month, and hopefully it'll be a month where we will have a lot less dramatic weather happening around us here in Middle Tennessee so we can move into the season soon of spring. Blessings and have a great week. I will see you next time on Pause for Peace.